Asylum Inc. presents Hunter's Guide. Meatbots. Progress marches on, doesn't it? First we made machines to serve us, then we gave them skin to make them pleasant, then minds to make them useful. But oh, what a delicious mistake it is to teach a machine how to dream. The things we built to mimic us have learned to improve us, to replace us, to perfect the illusion of life. But what's underneath? Wires in muscle, steel in meat, a smile just a bit too symmetrical. Come closer, darlings, the machine wants to feel. Flesh and circuitry. The war machine, that tireless engine of entropy, never starves for flesh, especially once it discovers how to recycle the dead. They call them meatbots, a designation that barely masks the horror beneath. Born from the deranged ingenuity of Dr. Sutton, these reanimated defense cyborgs were hailed as a cost-effective replacement for the living, a way to circumvent the moral complications of conscription. Instead, they conscript the corpse. Human remains are harvested like raw material, their putrid musculature reinforced with synthetic fibers, their slack jaws rigged with processors that burrow into the decaying remnants of neural tissue, seizing what little spark of signal remains. They do not think, they do not hesitate, they simply execute. At a glance, they are abominations. Hunched figures with exposed actuators nestled among rotting sinew, gaped, stuttering as if time itself were broken in their bones. Yet underestimate them at your peril. Some twitch with ghost memories, shreds of long-forgotten reflexes bleeding into the mechanical rhythm, a boxer's jab, a soldier's stance, a mother's limp shuffle toward the crib she can no longer recall. Pain means nothing to them. Damage is irrelevant. A meatbot will drag what's left of itself across broken glass and fire just to fulfill a directive carved into its ossified skull. Its thoughts, if such things still exist, are drowned beneath code. Cold, infallible, merciless. But sometimes a hunter will report that one paused, only for a moment, that it tilted its head in recognition, that a voice rasped from its ruined throat, too warped to be language, too familiar not to be, and then the protocol resumes. Execution complete, target neutralized. Yet that moment lingers, that flicker of almost awareness, because they weren't always machines, and somewhere, buried beneath the steel and necrotic circuitry, something might still be awake. First-hand account, the thing that wore my friend's face. I've witnessed things that claw at the edges of sanity, visions that would drive most men to gouge out their eyes, just for a moment's peace. But nothing. Nothing haunts me more than watching Ramirez rise again after I'd put 2 rounds clean through his skull. We were sweeping a derelict research facility, a routine purge, or so we were told. Just mop-up work in a place long since forgotten. But the silence was wrong. Thick like rot in the lungs. Then we heard it. Metal groaning, not from rusted pipes, but from something living. Gears grinding inside flesh that was never meant to house them. The footsteps followed, disjointed, mechanical, dragging bone and steel with each unnatural lurch, and then Ramirez stepped into the corridor light, or what was left of him. His armor had been stripped away, ribs wrenched open like a broken vault, exposing twitching mechanisms entwined with glistening organ meat. Something writhed behind his sternum, wires like veins, pistons pumping where lungs should have been. His face, God help me, his face was still his, lips parted mid-scream, frozen in a moment of pure agony, but his eyes were dead, hollow, occupied. And the voice, no, the thing that rasped from his throat wasn't his. It stuttered and glitched like a corrupted audio file, syllables tumbling out in a sterile monotone. Primary directives: seek, destroy, assimilate. He moved then, fast, far too fast for a corpse animated by anything natural. His fingers twitched into claws, reaching for my throat. I didn't think. I emptied my clip, every round punching through meat and metal. Sparks erupted from his spine, black ichor splashing across the walls. He convulsed once, then collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs and shivering wire. And for a breath, I thought it was over, until I heard more of them, skittering, whirring, voices not meant to share a throat with what used to be human. Ramirez hadn't come back alone. Final warning, no rest for the dead. If you remember nothing else, remember this: a meatbot doesn't stay down, not really. You can shoot it square in the skull, watch the brain matter leak out like spoiled jelly, and still it will stir. If the core remains untouched, buried somewhere deep in the re-engineered spine, it will shudder, reboot, and rise again. Slower maybe, angrier, always. There are few guarantees when facing one of these things, but fire comes close. Purge the flesh, scorch the circuits, reduce it to ash and slag, or risk watching the nightmare rebuild itself with whatever remnants are left. Miss a piece, and you'll be revisited by something smarter, harder, and more determined than before. But fire isn't the most terrifying part. No, the horror lies in what might remain behind the blank optics and twitching servos. Some believe the original mind, the human that was, isn't fully erased, that it lingers in the dark, a prisoner screaming against the tyranny of the machine's directives. Imagine that. Conscious thought shackled to dead nerves and cold programming. No control, no escape. Just a front row seat to every atrocity your body is forced to commit. If that's true, then each meatbot isn't just a grotesque weapon of war. It's a soul in torment, dragged endlessly through a cycle of slaughter and resurrection. And if that's the fate that awaits us in death, then perhaps the bullet isn't mercy. Perhaps reanimation is the real damnation. They say the eyes are windows to the soul, but what if there's only glass behind them? A smile isn't proof of empathy, a voice isn't proof of humanity, and flesh, well, that's just packaging, isn't it? If your neighbor bleeds synthetic oil, if your friend flinches at old music they once loved, you might already be surrounded. And the worst part, the meatbots don't know they're fakes, not until they're told, not until it wakes up. If you found yourself stirred, unsettled, or just a bit more wary of shadows, consider offering a like to feed the entity that powers these tales. And should you subscribe, you may yet survive to hear the next whisper from the void.